Hi there, welcome to my YouTube channel Dhani Classes. If you're watching my video for the first time, do subscribe my channel, hit the bell icon so that you get notified whenever new video will be uploaded. So in today's video, we will cover the third part of the chapter, We Are Not Afraid to Die If We Can Be All Together from class 11 CBSE. So let's get started. So in the second part of the chapter, we have seen that how a huge amount of water was coming inside the wave walker, and later on the narrator wanted to park the ship in the ocean to improvise broken part of the ship, and then he tied up everything using heavy nylon rope and 22 liters of plastic barrels of paraffin. So let's look at the third part, which is final part of the lesson now. That evening, Mary and I sat together holding hands as the motion of the ship brought more and more water in through the broken planks. So here the narrator and his wife Mary were sitting together and holding hands, and as the motion of the ship brought more and more water in through the broken planks, that means as they knew they were about to die and they tried very hard to stop the water, but still more and more water was coming in from the broken floorboard. We both felt the end was very near. So both husband and wife felt that they are going to die and their end was very near. But Wave Walker rode out the storm, and by the morning of January 6, with the wind easing, I tried to get a reading on the sextant. So here the Wave Walker rode out the storm. That means somehow the Wave Walker had crossed the storm, and by the morning of January 6, with the wind easing, that means they had crossed the storm anyhow, and the next day morning of 6 January, the wind was smooth and there was no storm wind at all, and I tried to get a reading on the sextant. So what do you mean by sextant? Sextant basically an astronomical instrument used to determine the angular distances of place north, south, east and west at sea by measuring angular distances. So he used that instrument to get to know distances between all areas from his current location. Back in the chat room, I worked on wind speeds, changes of course, drift and current in an effort to calculate our position. So here later on he went to the chat room where he can discuss all the progresses and directions and speed, etc. So he was calculating the speed of the winds, their current position in the sea, and did a lot of effort in calculating their current position, and finally he got to know that where they were at that moment. The best I could determine was that we were somewhere in 150,000 kilometers of ocean looking for a 65 kilometers wide island. So after calculating all the parameters, he got to know that they were in 150,000 kilometers area of ocean, and he could understand that he was located in somewhere a wide ocean and searching for a small island that was just 65 kilometers wide. While I was thinking, Sue, moving painfully, joined me. So here, as he was looking for a small island, his daughter Sue came towards him, and she was feeling pain because of injuries on her forehead. The left side of her head was now very swollen and her blackened eyes narrowed to slits. So when his daughter Sue came towards him, he noticed that left side of her head was swollen and her blackened eyes had narrowed down to slits. That means there was a long cut on her face. She gave me a card she had made. So his daughter Sue made a card and handed over to him, and further he says on the front she had drawn caricatures of Mary and me with the words, "Here are some funny people." So here he is saying that when Sue handed over a card, he saw that she had drawn caricatures. That means on the front of the card she has drawn a cartoon image of her parents and wrote some words, and those words were, "Here are some funny people." And further he says, "Did they make you laugh? I laughed a lot as well." So these were the words written on the card about her parents of being funny people and how they made her laugh. Inside was a message, "Oh, how I love you both." So this card is to say thank you and let's hope for the best. So here on the inside of the card, she wrote that how she loved both of them, and she thanked them for whatever they were doing for her and for the family, and said she was hoping for the best. Somehow we had to make it. So after this, the narrator felt good and realized that they had to make it to the island, and somehow we had to overcome from this dangerous situation. I checked and rechecked my calculations. So again and again the narrator continuously checking his calculations where they have reached and distances toward the small island, and further he says, we had lost our main compass and I was using a spare which had not been corrected for magnetic variation. So here, as we know that they had lost many things in a storm including the main compass, and further he says I was using a spare one which has not been correct for magnetic variation. That means he found another compass and used it, but spare compass was not calculating correctly the angle between magnetic north and true north as compared to the main compass which he had lost during the storm. But he tried very hard to use it and find out what the best he could locate their current location and how far they are from the small island. And further he says, I made an allowance for this and another estimate of the influence of the westerly currents which flow through this part of Indian Ocean. So here the narrator is saying that I made a rough idea on the wind and its influence which was blowing from the west part of the Indian Ocean. So he wanted to make sure minimum impact on a ship and try to find out the best possible ways to locate the island in the Indian Ocean. About 2 p.m. I went on deck and asked Larry to steer a course of 185 degrees. So here at 2 p.m. the narrator went on deck and gave some instructions to Larry to steer the wheel to 185 degrees. That means to control the direction of the wheel to 185 degrees. If we were lucky, I told him with a conviction I did not feel, he could expect to see the island at about 5 p.m. So here he was not confident at all by steering the wheel to 185 degrees, but he said to Larry if we were lucky, we would see the island by 5 p.m. But on the contrary, he was not sure that he would be able to see the island about 5 p.m. Then with a heavy heart I went below, climbed on my bunk and amazingly dozed off. So here the narrator is saying that later on, with a heavy heart, that means he was hopeless and desperate in finding island, and he left crew members there and went below and climbed on his bed and began to sleep because he was very exhausted. So in the evening when he woke up at 6 p.m. outside weather becoming dark, and further he says I knew we must have missed the island. That means he thought they might have missed the island and now they are not able to find out island again. And with the sail we had left, we couldn't hope to beat back into the westerly winds. That means he started worrying and said we had left island and could not hope to go back once again into the westerly winds. At that moment a tussle had appeared by my bunk. So as he was in deep thought and worried about how they would tackle the westerly wind more as the ship wasn't capable to sail more, and suddenly a tousled head appeared. That means uncombed hair or disordered hair with head appeared. Can I have a hug? Jonathan asked. So it was his son Jonathan who appeared by his bunk with an uncombed head or a tousled head, and he wanted to hug his father and asked, can I have a hug? So further he says, she was right behind him. Why I am getting a hug now? I asked. Because you are the best daddy in the whole world and the best captain, my son replied. So when his Jonathan asked him, can I have a hug? His daughter Sue was just behind of him. And further he says, why I am getting a hug now? I asked. That means he did not understand why his son had come to him and wanted a hug. So he asked, why do you want to hug me? So his son replied, because he was the best daddy on the whole world and the best captain. So that's why he wanted to hug. But his father replied, not today, John, I am afraid. That means he was no longer best daddy because he was afraid to die. And further he says, why, you must be, said Sue in a matter-of-fact voice. You found the island. What? I shouted. So here suddenly his daughter replied, why you must be. That means indeed you are the best daddy and best captain in the world. because we had found the island. So he shouted and exclaimed, "What?" Because it was impossible to find out island, but finally they found the island. "It's out there in front of us," they chorused, "as big as battleship." That means they gathered together and saw the island and said, "There is the island and it is as big as battleship." I rushed on deck and gazed with relief at the stark outline of Isle Amsterdam. So the narrator went out quickly to the deck and felt comfortable and relaxed while looking at the stark outline of Isle Amsterdam. That means he saw the sharp and dark outline of Isle Amsterdam in the southern Indian Ocean. It was only a bleak piece of volcanic rock with little vegetation, the most beautiful island in the world. So here the narrator is saying that it was a very lonely piece of land with volcanic rock, and you can see a few plants there, and said it was one of the most beautiful island in the world because it was the only place where they can escape from the bad and life-threatening weather and they had been facing until now. We anchored offshore for the night, and the next morning all 28 inhabitants of the island cheered as they helped us ashore. So he is saying that we anchored offshore for the night. That means they fastened the ship at some distance from the shore, and the next day morning in Amsterdam there were 28 people who lived there, and they helped them to move on the shore of the land. So inhabitants refers to a local people of the area, and ashore refers to the beach. And further he says, "With land under my feet again, my thoughts were full of Larry and Harvey, cheerful and optimistic under the direst stress, and of Mary, who stayed at the wheel for all those crucial hours." So here he is saying that with land under my feet again. That means the moment his feet touched the land and jumped on the island, he was only thinking about his crew member Larry and Harvey, and both of them were looking very positive and confident even during the bad weather and dangerous storm they were facing. So the narrator was also thinking about his wife Mary, who stayed at the wheel for all those crucial hours. That means when they were facing bad weather and storm, his wife Mary was taking the captain's place and steering the wheel during difficulties. And further he says, "Most of all, I thought of 7-year-old girl who did not want us to worry about a head injury." So simultaneously, he was also thinking about her 7-year-old daughter Sue, who had injured during the storm, but she did not disturb him at all because she knew that her father is struggling hard to save their life, and which subsequently took 6 minor operations to remove a recurring blood clot between his skin and skull. So here he is talking about the injuries which his daughter had gone through, 6 minor operations to remove a blood clot from her skin and skull, and of a 6-year-old boy who was not afraid to die. So at the same time, he was also thinking about his 6-year-old boy Jonathan, who was not afraid to die and showed an example of bravery during the bad time and was trying very hard to come out from the worst situation during their sea journey. So I hope you liked the video. For more informative videos, do subscribe my channel, hit the bell icon so that you get notified whenever new video will be uploaded. So thank you so much for watching once again. Stay safe, stay healthy.